welcome to Lave and Loom Podcast. My name is Cher, and on this channel I want to build a sense of community and share a little bit about my journey through the fiber arts. So this is mainly a knitting podcast with sprinklings of spinning, dyeing, and weaving as well. So thank you so much if you're a returning viewer, and welcome if this is your first time visiting the channel. So today I've got, I want to recap a little bit. I was just at the Carolina Fiber Festival a couple weeks ago, so I will share a bit about that and some of my Stashquisitions. I've got a couple of whips in process that I want to update you on, and I want to talk a little bit about some lessons I've learned about gauge. It's very interesting, and I hope you will like to hear a little bit about that. I've got a finished skein from my Jacob breed and color study, and I've cast on a new whip for travel. So we'll get started. So the North Carolina Fiber Fest was held on March 10th and 11th in Raleigh, North Carolina, which is about an hour and a half west of where I am in eastern North Carolina. It's a small show, I guess, but there's a lot to offer, and I quite enjoyed it. This is the logo, which I think is kind of cute. So we went and spent the day. It was very pleasant. I started off looking at the fleece sale, which always draws my interest. And I talked a little bit about some of the fleeces that I have on hand in the past. I'm processing a large Jacob fleece. I have a second Jacob fleece and a few Shetlands that I really need to get through this summer. So I really didn't need to add any, and I didn't intend to, but I did fall in love. I don't have much white fleece, and so thinking about some of the things that I want to knit and or weave with my own hand spun yarn, I wanted to add some white to it. So I was lured by a lovely fleece. This is from a private farm, shepherdess, in the Pittsboro, North Carolina area. And it is a Corriedale fleece, weighed 3.09 pounds. The ewe's name was Cora. And I will show you in its raw state. This is Cora. Pardon the crinkling. You can see a little bit. So there's some dirt, there's a little bit of veg, but really laid out, it was quite clean by sheep standards. I mean, look, they're sheep, you want them to be happy, they're out in fields, and so those things are gonna happen, and you know, you wash it, it's fine. So I am trying to be better about doing some sampling. So I washed up 2 ounces or 58 grams pre-washed, and post-wash I'm getting, I think, like right at 39 grams. So this is Cora's fiber washed up, and let's see if I can get a couple of locks out of here. It has some beautiful crimp. I'm trying to learn how to comb. Here's a couple of, I did not wash it. I just washed it, you know, not in lock state, but you can see a few locks. So it's got a decent staple length. But I spoke to one of the volunteers at the fleece booth, who also has a really good, useful fiber channel, which is the Natural Spinner. I believe her name is Kimberly. I will try to remember to link that below. I've never been super successful at combing. And she says she prefers to comb. She likes the way that spins. She has a really interesting series of videos showing how she does her combing. She's got one that's processing a fleece from seeing it on the farm to spinning it up. That is I don't remember what breed it is, but the sheep's name is Baxter. So you'll see that on her channel. And the way that she's videoed, you can really see what she's doing with the comb. So it was a very good from a tutorial perspective. So anyway, so I'm gonna do some sampling on Cora here, and hopefully kind of get the technique down that I want to use to process that. So we'll see more about that in the future. The other fleece that caught my eye is was some Icelandic. We were actually on the last aisle pass and had stopped at like a felting station, and the shepherdess from Honey Creek Farms, which is in Franklinton, North Carolina, and I did put this information in the show notes, was so lovely and just shared so much about her fleece. I was surprised that Icelandic sheep, when you think about such a cold climate, I know they have other seasons, but we're pretty hot climate here, so I was always surprised that they do really well in this environment. And she said, so Icelandic sheep are, and I'll talk more about this as I process it, but Icelandic sheep are a dual coated sheep, so they have both hair and fleece, and you hear about that. I think they refer to that as the fell and the tog, and you hear about processing. Do you process the together, or do you process them separately? She processes hers together, but she said that because of their that dual coated, they're actually a less dense fleece, which actually makes them a good sheep for our climate. And she says they do very, very well. So I was just amazed. When we think of Icelandic, we think of Latlopi, Plotalopi, which is very nice yarn. We all use quite a bit of it, but this was just lovely and soft. And so I did get two, I think these are each 4 ounces of fiber. One is sort of a fawn color here, and one is a gray. And so I will be taking my hand at spinning it, but I also wanted to try a couple of the others. So I got this sampler pack, and it has in it some of the black, and this is roving. She does have it commercially processed, or processed in a small mill. White, and this is like a fawn or a dark, I'm not sure what the naming convention is for the colors of Icelandic. I will talk about that more, but she had lots of photos of her lovely flock. I mean, look how adorable they are. So I decided not to purchase a fleece, and I went ahead and purchased the roving, just to kind of get a sense of how to spin it. And she is quite local to me, so certainly I could visit and get a fleece at a later date. So that's sort of what we decided. But we probably spent a half an hour. She was just very generous with her time and the information about the breed, and just, obviously, a lovely shepherdess who adores the flock, and that just really came through. So that was wonderful. I also spent some time at Hillside Farms booth, who I was very lucky to meet up with Amanda of Yarn and Brews podcast. So I will link her information below. And while at that booth, So Hillside Farms is in Four Corners, North Carolina, which is also quite close to me. Some of you may remember, and I haven't talked about it so much recently because COVID kind of came and went, and I haven't gotten out as much as even afterwards now that I would like to. But as we're starting to do more things and get the fiber events are back, and people are not hesitant to have people visit. I just have a real passion around thinking of things locally or regionally. So for me, that kind of North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia region, and so Hillside Farms does have their own. They do their own dyeing, and they have their own flock of sheep. So this is a mix of. I did not bring it up. I believe this is Cormo and Silk. And the colorway is Lavender Fields. And I just can't wait to see how this is going to spin up. I did go ahead and get I am doing a small sample. I got 8 ounces of this. So I pulled, I don't know, like an ounce off of each, split it into thirds. And I am going to do a kind of a test spin to see how I like it. I think I'm going to try to do it relatively thin singles for a 3-ply yarn, and so we'll see how that kind of looks. So I'll have more information on that to come. So while there, they invited me to. They do a knitting group once a month, and so that happened to be the following Saturday, which was last weekend. And so we were able to visit there, had a lovely time, met a number of wonderful individuals. One of the knitters had just come, and so they have knitting and spinning actually. So there were a number of people doing both or either. One of the individuals had just come back from Campbell Folk Art School. So it was really cool. He had a kind of a scrapbook of his days. He had lots of photos, and it's just something I think would just be a wonderful way to spend a week in residence, surrounded by other artists and fiber artists. So he took a natural dyeing class, so that was very, very interesting, and he was very generous and actually shared, I think this is, matter of fact, this is some of the fiber that he shared with us. And this, I believe, was cochineal. I think that's right. I think this was cochineal with maybe an iron. I hope I'm not getting that wrong. I may be getting that wrong, but I believe that's what that was with that brown. So that was just fun. Really, great connections and really getting to meet people. I also stopped by the booth for the Piedmont Fiber Shed. So this is a nonprofit organization building regional fiber system in the Piedmont of North Carolina. So the little bit I understand, and I will research some more, and I will actually put their information below as well. I don't know if the QR code will come through, but I will put that up there if you want to use that. But so I understand the fiber sheds, and there's several. I know there's one up in the Chesapeake area, is I believe 150-mile radius, trying to bring together shepherds, makers, dyers, etc., artisans that support the fiber arts in that kind of local regional area. So they keep a fiber resource directory, so it's an online listing of businesses and organizations in central North Carolina and the surrounding areas, including fiber farmers, dyers, weavers, mills, sewists, retailers, guilds, educational facilities, and more. And with the goal of connecting those businesses and users of local and sustainable fiber and textiles. So I got on their mailing list, and I'm super excited, thinking this will give me some additional things to learn about and talk about and share with you here on the channel. Wanted a new Turkish spindle. So Snyder Spindles was in attendance, and I had bought previously a Turkish spindle from them. And they are from Wisconsin. So I bought this beauty. And this is a plying Turkish spindle, so it's a little larger than, I don't have my other one up here, than my other, and so I specifically wanted to ply. I found when I was doing my Shropshire spin on my support spindle, that support spindle for plying was not my favorite activity. So I thought it might be nice to, since I really do want to do those on a hand spindle, that it would be nice to have a plying spindle for that purpose. And then the other purchase I did, and this is from Yarn Over Floyd, who is a natural dyer. She was really generous year before last when I was there, sharing some resources. I think I've shared the fiber book, or the dyeing book, excuse me, natural dyeing resource book that she shared with me, and that's been really good as I've just started to dabble in that. But this is a natural dye kit. You can, goes to, I think she only sells from festivals, but there is a shop. I'll try to investigate that further to see. I don't think you can mail order from her, but she does have I'll check that out, because she does have no, I don't see like a link. Anyway, so what comes in here is a mordanted, it's a natural dye kit. And it's a mordanted skein of yarn, and the dye and material, and I got the cochineal because this just fascinates me. So it's nice to have that skein of yarn already mordanted. So what you're really practicing with is the process, which is detailed on this card here. So I'm kind of excited to try that, and I'm really thinking about how to get some dye plants. I'm thinking of to do madder, and I'd like to do indigo. I know that's quite a bit more involved, but at least want to get a couple of dye plants in the garden beds out there this year. So that's one of my future goals of many, many. And that kind of wraps up my visit to Carolina Fiber Fest. If you're in the area or can be in the area, it's a small festival, but I highly recommend. Just nice community, and I met a lot of lovely people, which is very nice. They had a really nice setup. Also, all the guilds were there. Spinning Guild, Weaving Guild, and they do some prize. They folks do exhibit and judging of variety of fiber arts and crafts. They had a lovely setup of flax spinning, so there's a lot of educational elements there. And then they have, of course, classes associated for I think the 4-day period, 2 days before and the weekend, as well as they have some speakers kind of ongoing during the day. So anyway, I hope to see you there one year. Moving on now to whips. My main topic for today is to talk to you a little bit about gauge. So if you have watched before, you know that I have been wanting to cast on and knit the antler pullover. This is a pattern by Tin Can Knits, and comes in a very large variety of sizes, from small child, maybe infant, all the way up to a large adult. I am knitting this with a regional yarn produced by Sestari Sheep and Wool Company in Churchville, Virginia. And this is their traditional collection, 100% wool, 170 yards per 100 grams. So this is the label here. It's not gonna, there we go. In this lovely blackberry color, which I just adore. The fabric is beautiful. I'm knitting it on size 8, which is, I believe, the recommended for the pattern. So I've said before, I'm not a big fan of swatching. And I'm still not, because to be honest, my gauge changed. I did the ribbing with a size 7. So instead of going down to size 6, I used a size 7 needle. I did the ribbing. I started knitting away, and I've gotten this lovely, really lovely fabric. I'm super pleased with the feel of the fabric. This is a bottom-up sweater, and so naturally I started with the body. I could have started with the sleeve, but I know my gauge is a little different with 9-inch circulars, which is how I knit the sleeve, so I wanted to knit the body first. I started with a larger size and would have decreased at the waist, the bust, and then smaller again at the shoulders for my yoke, which I'm still planning to do. But anyway, so I knit along, and I have the ribbing done, and I knit. So this is 2 skeins of knitting. And you might notice that even for me, this is a fairly large sweater. I could actually put 2 of me in here. And so this is decreased 40 stitches from the cast on edge, because I thought, oh, I'll just decrease, like, you know, it'll be fine. I want it a little loose. Yeah, no, I mean, like, I kid you not. This is huge. So, like, you know, slightly more than half of it is the actual size it needs to be. So I looked at my gauge again to see, which is, I mean, I blocked this, right? That was my plan all along. I just was going to knit up 1 skein and block it. I actually knit 2 skeins and blocked it. I love the fabric. It's got just the right feel. It's got the right look that I want. It's lovely, lovely yarn. I will knit with it again. But my gauge was, and this is a little lesson in knitting math, my gauge was really, really close. Like, and you know this intuitively as a knitter, especially knitting on size 8 needles. The stitch gauge, that doesn't really matter. The point was I was 1 stitch off. Maybe 3/4 of a stitch off, which doesn't seem like a lot. But when you're casting on, in this case, 228, I think it's supposed to be 18 stitches per inch, and I had got 17. Or actually in the end, after blocking, I had 16. So actually I was 2 off at the end of the day. But anyway, do the math of divide 228 by 18 or 16 and see how many extra you get, and that's the difference. So to compare, so I didn't want to change the gauge though, because this is my natural gauge. I liked the fabric. So I did some math to figure out what size. So basically I'm going down a little more than 2 sizes kind of throughout, and I'm still graduating it at the various points. But I've recast it on, and you can see how this is scrunched up on the needles, but and I did try it on last night. It's perfect. So definitely I'm getting, so I have the same beautiful stitch gauge. I actually decided to go a little bit more on the ribbing. Just kind of, I had to sit down and think about, get my head wrapped around it. But I did have a wonderful resource. About that same time, Mega of Skeins of Dreams posted on her channel a knitting math kind of tutorial. And I was actually, prior to seeing that, was planning to do a bit more detailed on my process to how I got to this, which I will put in my Ravelry notes as I go through. But her episode is so good. I've linked it below. I believe it's episode 32, so it's down in my show notes. And she has a lovely podcast. She's a very prolific knitter. She does a lot of interesting designs. I like her aesthetic. She's a joy to watch. So highly recommend you check her out in general. But her episode on knitting math was like spot on. It was very clear. The reason I decided not to do it is because I don't want to, the way she showed it was, I kind of had something similar in my head, and I was afraid it would look like I took her concept, which she did a lovely job at, so there's no need for me to recreate it. So I will suggest that you go over there if you too find yourself needing to do knitting math. So again, the lesson here is check your gauge. I don't know, as I said, I don't know that doing a swatch would have helped in this case or not, because what I found was my stitch didn't really settle into around here. So if I have leftover yarn and I feel like doing a little experiment, I may try a speed swatch where you're in the round and you're kind of carrying that loose. I can't stand to knit that way, but just to see if, if that would work. The other thing that I heard, and I'm trying to think, I think it might have been on Needles at the Ready, they may have been talking about it, but knitting a hat, so getting extra yarn. I'm trying to think, there's somebody that specifically talks about this, and it may or may not have been on their podcast, but get an extra skein of yarn and knit a hat, then it's not, really a wasted just swatch that you're gonna either unravel or sit in the drawer or throw away or something. So so that was a really interesting lesson, but I'm really pleased that I was able to do the math to use the gauge that I want, and I think this is something you hear quite a lot from accomplished knitters. So I'm hoping maybe that I'm kind of on that journey, and definitely will look to do that in the future, because I think it's really worth getting the fabric that you like when you're putting that investment into a sweater. So I still have my deluxe shawl in progress. I'm not going to show that this time. I've shown that quite a bit on the last couple episodes. I'm in the home stretch of the second wing. So as maybe in a episode or two, hopefully I'll get that cast on and you'll see that all nice and blocked. So I'm also continuing to work on my Bear Paw socks. This is a pattern by Andrea Mowry. It's a DK sock knit toe up, which I do like. It has a different heel construction. I normally do a shadow wrap heel, so I won't share. It's quite a different heel style. But let's see. I have both of them knit to the heel. And the first time I knit this, so I read through the pattern on how to measure where to stop for the heel, because I know that in mine, and I guess I should have thought it shouldn't have been that different, but if you look back, I think it's the last episode, you'll see my first sock is like, it would fit my husband who has like a size 13 foot. It's gigantic. And these still, frankly, even going back to what I thought, they still look really large to me. I don't know, right? Anyway, so I'm up to the cuff here where I'll change colors. I'm sort of knitting them concurrently, I guess, kind of back and forth, so that I where I change like a number of stitches or something, I do the same on both. So I've had this sort of love-hate relationship. I want to get these done, so I kind of just take a day here and there and I'll work on them a little bit, but hopefully they'll be done soon, and we will see if they fit. I could put a cable on and try them on, but they'll fit someone. My daughter's foot's a little bit larger than mine is, so that might be where they go. That reminds me, I didn't talk about it when I was showing my antler sweater, or my antler pullover, but these try-on cords, they come in a variety of places. I think the most famous are the Knitting Barber cords, which I did get, which I did get a pair from for Christmas, right, or a set from Christmas. But prior to that, I have always used just pony cord that you get at the craft store, because you get a ton of it for like $4. And I will say though, when you have smaller gauge knitting and smaller needles, that is not the easiest. It's not the easiest process getting them on and off, because it's tight. So what I found with the Knitting Barber cords is they are much thinner. They seem to actually be a little grippier. And on this gauge, where my other one, I was popping it off constantly. It was really frustrating. It was very smooth with that one. So maybe a reason to upgrade if you do a lot of small gauge knitting, and have the funds. I mean, it's not unreasonable, but they're quite a bit more expensive for what you get than just using the pony cord. But could be valuable depending on the type of knitting that you do. And my other sort of whip is, I finally fell down the crochet rabbit hole. I have been resisting doing really any kind of blanket, other than I do have a habitation throw that I work on in between projects. And I have started the Triangulum blanket by Ellie Jones of Craft House Magic. But I've been eyeing I don't love crochet. I did a crochet project 2 years ago and I didn't really enjoy it. It kind of hurt my wrist. But I've just been watching everyone do their different projects. And the one that finally caught my attention the most is the Battenberg blanket. So if you haven't seen this, this is a pattern by Cherry Hart. And I apologize, I don't remember the designer's actual name. And it is a granny square. You knit up, you know, small granny squares, and you knit with color and a neutral. I've seen people use gray, white. You could use, you know, black if you have neon colors. The main color I'm using, or the neutral color, is a cone of Sistari wool. This, I can't remember if I talked about in the last podcast. I've wound off a little bit. These were 4-pound cones, I think for like $45, and the wool is lovely. There was they thought there was a little bit too much veg matter. I honestly, I have not found that to be the case. I mean, maybe I'll find that when I get into one of the skeins, but I totally could not pass up buying some, and I'm really pleased I did it. The wool is lovely. So anyway, so here's just the first part that I tried kind of putting it together. And so you'll have this alternating, you know, cream and color, which is kind of a nice way to blend together you know, the various colors. So I'm using mini skeins and scraps. I am doing it in a fingering weight held double so that it will also allow me to, where I don't think I have any in this set, but where I use worsted yarn, I could also knit it with the worsted, which is what this is, or DK rather, DK. So either doubled up 4-ply or sock weight, and then the DK yarn for the cream. So that gives me a lot of flexibility to use up those scraps. And then I've started, when I finished with that, I've been winding on to a magic knot ball, and I'll just let that grow, and maybe it'll be a future habitation throw or some other sort of shawl or blanket activity there. So that is my main whips in progress. I have, yes, a number of other ones that come and go, but I'm trying to focus on really finishing now since I've got the cyclone cardigan off. I'm trying to work on the antler cardigan, which will be just in time for it to be really, really hot here. And some spinning, and then getting my deluxe shawl off the needles. And I think after that, I think I probably will do a spring summer weight sweater with short sleeve or tank or something. And I may pick up my Even Star shawl again, which is that lace weight, since Irina Fiber Chats is doing a Shetland lace year of knit along. So I think it'd be fun to participate in that, as a community thing while it's going on. So I'm getting ready to do a little bit of traveling, and all of my projects are a little bit big for carry-on size weight. So, some of it will be social knitting. So I have cast on, this is really the second time I've tried to cast on a Muscle Burrow hat. So this is a pattern by Yusolda Teague. Let's try to pop a photo in here. It's essentially a tube that has a decrease on one end and an increase on the other end, or vice versa. And then you put it inside out and roll up the cuff to get the hat. So I am knitting this with a skein of Unique DK, which is this, and by Earth Yarns. So this is a self-striping extra fine merino, and the colorway I have is 6001. And then I do have a complementary monochrome in the green color if I run out, because I'm doing it for my husband, so I'm doing the extra large adult size of the pattern. So if you're not familiar, that's a little shot of this is beautiful yarn. If you're not familiar with the pattern, it's a swatchless pattern, yay! So you essentially, as you're casting on, at a certain point, she has you measure your gauge, and then the pattern directs you how many more increases to go, how many inches to knit based on your size, etc. So I am finding it very, very user-friendly. And so this is the start of the hat. So I wanted to get the increases done. I'm really liking the fabric. I'm using a size 6 needle, and this is DK weight yarn. That's the part that I found the hardest to decide, and I looked at a lot of projects and kind of looked at the fabrics or folks that had close-up photos, and that's how I decided, and I'm happy with that gauge and how that is working up. So hopefully that'll just give me a lot of stockinette to knit in airports and breakfast, coffee type things, etc. So we'll see that, more of that to come, and I'm interested to see if it'll make it through both trips, because I'll make myself not work on it in between there. That brings us to spinning. I have a finished object, as I noted earlier. I bought, let's see, when was this? So there was, with Woolen Spinning Community, July to December of 2021, ran a breed and color study. So this was Jacob wool, and I purchased the bats, pre-mixed bats from Crafty Jack's boutique in Canada. And I think I've shown this kind of as before, but it's, it had different colors mixed in with the three main colors of Jacob. So the gray, the chocolate, or black, and cream. And this is 2-ply. I spun it over a long time, so it's not terribly consistent. I spun it mainly long draw. Actually, it's not too bad. There's some bigger spots, but a lot of it's relatively consistent. And I did it, as I said, long draw with, so it's got a little bit of that fuzzy look, but I'm really pleased. It ended up being about 210 yards, measuring from my Nitty Notty. So I'm really pleased to get that off the needles, and then off the wheel. And then I've started working on that Lavender Fields spin. Is the next one. I did finish the first bobbin of my alpaca Jacob blend for socks. I need to get the second bobbin on. I'm doing that on my Kromsky Symphony. And then I had mentioned a couple of episodes ago, and I had hoped that I would do a breed a month from the Hearthside Fibers 12 breeds study. And since it's nearly the end of March and I've just finished one a couple weeks ago, that's probably not going to happen. But I did, so my first one was Shropshire top. This is a 2-ply. I think it turned out really lovely. This is my real first spinning on a support spindle. So this is my support spindle, and I've talked about, I think on the last one, halfway through this, I was watching Lisa of Soulful Spinning, and I've linked her YouTube channel again. She has a really, really detailed winter breed study that she used actually the same kit from Hearthside Fibers that I did. She has a wealth of information. She has a lovely style. So rather than repeating everything, she did such a lovely job. I'm going to refer you to her episode, and that's linked down below. But my kind of desire here is to go through this breed study and spin it, on a hand spindle. So this one was support spindle spun. Now let's see if we can get, there we go. It's pretty consistent for my first attempt at support spindling, and I ended up with 56 yards. I did long draw-ish, I guess. Just by the way, you have to kind of hold it with the support spindle, but it has a nice luster to it. So it's a really pretty yarn. When I talked about it before, I noted that Shropshire is really more known as a meat breed, which is, I think, a shame, because I think it's lovely fiber. It's soft. It has a nice luster, has some a little bit of spring to it. When I was spinning it, it reminded me a little bit of the Angora rabbit effect that you get in the boho strychnine style of knitting. It has that kind of fuzzy look to it. So I think that might be interesting to incorporate that into a yoke of a sweater in that regard. But I'm gonna save all these up with a few of my other samples as I go through. And I think I'm going to try to do a blanket. I'm looking at the Nectar blanket by Isolde Teague. Have not totally landed on that. Halfway through this spin, anyway, Lisa, as I started to tell you, Lisa from Soulful Spinning talked about feeling like the commercial top didn't have a lot of life to it, and she steamed her the sample she was spinning on that episode. And so I steamed half of this, and I'll put a few screenshots in here. It did have a really interesting, like you can see, it really plumped up as it went on. And so what I've done, I don't know if I have a before picture, but I have my next breed that I will be doing will be Falkland top. This is from the Falkland Islands. And I've already steamed this whole batch. I mean, this plumped up like 4 times what it was. And so that's the next one that I will attempt to spin. So we'll just plug along at that. Probably not going to be one a month, as previously noted. So that is the end. So I think that's everything I wanted to share with you today. Sorry, it's a little chaotic. Also, apologize in advance. I am getting ready to go out of town, so I'm going to be very low on the amount of editing I do on this episode. I do have show notes below, so if there's a lack of the text that I normally use, please refer to the show notes or send me an email at lathandloompodcast@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you in a comment below, or find me on Instagram at lathandloom, and I'd love to hear what you're working on. And until I see you again, or you see me again, I wish you happy knitting, spinning, dyeing, and weaving. Bye, everyone.